And we are live.
Hello. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good
Yeah.
morning.
All right.
Or good afternoon.
Yeah, wherever you might be. Maybe it's the middle of the night for you.
Yeah.
We don't know. Thank you for joining. Thank you for signing up. We're happy to have you join us here. My name is Jason. I am the live sound training specialist with QSC. We'll be talking about some TouchMix today. Also on the call with me, I want to introduce Golden Preciado. She's going to be helping us out as well, and Jacob Hunter is going to be the main moderator for us today. Looks like we got some people filing in. Awesome. Well, welcome to everybody. I really appreciate everyone joining us on this fine day or night. Hope everybody is safe, staying sane, washing your hands, all that good stuff. We'll get started here in just another couple seconds. Yeah.
Looks like people are trickling in.
So a couple of things before we get going, and I'll reiterate this in another few minutes for people. But so we are live and a webinar here, and the idea is to demonstrate a couple of concepts to you in real time, but also give you the ability to interact with me directly and ask questions throughout the training of the lesson here. So there are a couple of ways you can do that. There is a Q&A that you'll find in your chat field there. So if you have a question at any point, you can just drop your question in the Q&A. We'll be able to see that, and we can either answer you directly, or that can be directed to me, and I can answer that live on camera here. You also have the ability to raise your hand. So if you would like to get on your microphone and ask me a question directly, feel free to do that. Hit that button, and we can go ahead and open up your mic for you, and we can have a dialogue. Or maybe a combination of both. Maybe drop your question in, and if you feel like it, once we're aware of your question, if you want to actually just hop on the mic and state it out loud, you can do that. Whatever you're comfortable with, feel free to ask questions and chime in here. We're happy to talk with you and answer questions.
We do actually have somebody who's already raised their hand.
What?
Well, Walter,
hi,
did
Walter.
you have a question, or you just wanted to say hi and welcome? I have unmuted you, so if you do have a microphone, you are able to talk.
Except I think you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, it looks like
yes.
You might still be muted on your end, Walter.
Although it may have been an accident, maybe you didn't mean to, but
Okay.
that is one of the ways to ask a question or make known that you wanna chat. So that's a good example.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thanks for the demonstration,
Yes.
Walter. If you did have a question, feel free to reach out again or drop it in the Q&A. And anybody else out there, that's what we've got going for you this morning. So hopefully we can get a good dialogue going. Hopefully I can convey some good information to you.
Oh, I hear him.
Walter, are you there?
Hi, Walter.
Yeah.
Hey.
I'm here. Good afternoon.
How's it going?
Italy.
Oh,
wow.
welcome from Italy.
Yeah, thank you for joining. Did you have a question this morning?
No.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
welcome.
Glad to have you. Okay, so then let's go ahead and get started. What we're going to be covering today is two things. I want to sort of demonstrate a workflow on how you might get a mix started, starting with setting your gain. Gain structure is a pretty critical part of your audio and your sound system. And so I want to have a conversation this morning about how to properly set up your gain structure in your mixer. And I'm going to do that by using a series of crudely constructed diagrams and graphics that I made last night. I'm going to show off my art skills here. I'm going to try and use these to explain science, sort of. Here we go. So here is my first graph here. This is just a very, very simple example diagram of an audio system. You got your instruments or your whatever your audio sources are. You're going to feed those into a mixer, which is what we're going to be talking about primarily today, and then that mixer is going to output that signal, that mix, the audio from that, out to some loudspeakers or maybe some amplifiers, and then to some loudspeakers, and so on. Adjusting the gain structure, there's a little information for you. So adjusting the gain structure is the art of properly setting the gain level for all gain stages in a sound system relative to each other in order to keep your mix free of noise and distortion. And then your sound system is happy. All right. Well, what what does that mean? So a couple of things I want to convey to you. There's a couple of key terms that I want to introduce you to. Now, you might be familiar with these terms already, or maybe you've heard some of these terms, but aren't quite clear on what they mean. So we're just going to go through a couple of things right here. Okay, I've got a question. Can't see where to mute. Sorry. Jacob, can you, I think we got an issue there. Can you help Golden out? All right, back on track. Gain is the change in a level, in a signal level between any input and output. Very simple, that's all gain is. So you're just making a change in your signal level there. A gain stage, this is the important part, a gain stage is any point in an electronic device where you apply gain or you control the gain, okay? So a gain stage could be a mixer, it could be an amplifier, it could be a loudspeaker, primarily a powered loudspeaker, because the amplifier is built into that loudspeaker. All of those things are considered gain stages. All of those things have the ability to adjust, gain within their signal path. Additionally, you have things like EQ, compressors, gates, and effects. Those things are also considered gain stages because each one of those things has the ability to adjust gain level within itself. Now, those come in physical forms. You might have a rack, with a bunch of these things, and you have an EQ or compressor. Maybe you have some effects set up in a rack. There are also digital forms of these. And many mixers, many digital mixers, include all of those tools within the mixer itself. So many things, primarily a mixer, is actually going to have multiple gain stages within itself. On a mixer, primarily, the first one is the preamps, and that's what we're going to dive into in a minute here. We're going to talk about how to properly adjust the level and get the right level in your preamp. But once you get the signal into the preamp, you have other stages within that mixer. You have your input faders, you have your output faders, which are also both gain stages. Both of those things are adjusting the gain. And you also have, in between those 2 points, all of these tools. So you have your EQ, your compressor, your gate, and some effects. So all of that is, is what properly staging your gain is configuring all of these things properly, setting the level properly, so that they're all relative to each other, and this allows you to keep your mix free of noise and distortion. So that should give you a little bit better idea of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about adjusting gain structure. We're taking all of these gain stages, all of these different points within our signal path where we can adjust the gain, and we're setting them so that there is no noise and no distortion anywhere in the system. And then we're happy. I put another check mark there. Okay, so now here's my last, I promise this is my last crappy graphic I'm going to show you here. But I want to kind of outline what that looks like. When we're properly setting a level, what is the proper level? How do we get there? And so this is kind of how we do that. A couple of other terms that we need to understand, some things that we're trying to avoid here and try to get to is clipping. At the top of my graph here, first of all, hopefully you understand what I try to draw here. This is an input. So the green and yellow, red mountain-looking things is my representation of an audio signal, a dynamic audio signal, entering an input, and then you have all these other components with it. So at the very top, you have clip, signal clipping. We don't want that. That's bad. That's where distortion comes from, and it's called clipping because when your signal overdrives that input, the peaks of the signal are actually clipped off, and that is what creates the distorted sound. It's no longer the direct and the clear and the original true sound that was entering that input. It's distorted. It's getting clipped off there. So that sounds bad. You don't want that. Also, over time, it can be very damaging to your equipment. So we want to avoid clipping at all costs. At the bottom, we have the noise floor. Now, this is very simply just a baseline level of noise that is inherent in every electronic device. So the difference between, let's see, I'm getting ahead of myself. Noise floor. Everything is going to have a noise floor. Every piece of electronic device has some level of noise floor, and I wanted to point this out because when I talk about our preamps, I want to mention that again a little bit. But there's no way around it. It's just something that is natural or inherent to every electronic audio device. I'm sure you've probably heard noise floor. If you listen to audio equipment, you turn on your PA, you kind of get that little baseline level of noise. The idea here is to get your signal above that noise floor, so you more or less just drown it out. It's not that hard to get that drowned out if your device itself has a low noise floor. And the difference between your noise floor and your signal, or the desirable signal level to the undesirable amount of noise, is called the signal to noise ratio. And you might be familiar with some of these terms, maybe you've heard them. I'm just trying to give us a little bit of background on the topic, so moving forward, we're all on the same page. So signal to noise ratio is, again, the difference between your noise floor and the signal there. I'm gonna give myself a note. So if the level of your signal is too low, you will have a lower signal to noise ratio, and unwanted noise is going to be added to this signal. With a higher signal to noise ratio, the noise is going to essentially disappear, and that's what we want. So the noise floor in any device is fixed. The noise floor itself isn't going to ever change, which is a good thing, because if the device has a low baseline noise level, it's very easy to get that signal up above that, and so you kind of drown that out and you don't hear it. Now we have the nominal operating level, or the sweet spot. That's what I have to call it. And if you look on the graph here, that's going to be the part of the audio that is turning yellow. So that dotted line there is going to represent unity for the input. Now unity at any stage, any gain stage, is the point of no change in gain. So at this gain stage, if we're at unity gain, we're not adding gain and we're not attenuating gain. So at its average, normal, unaffected level is unity gain. And with no change happening to the input, we want the signal to be at this particular level. We want the peaks to kind of just bounce right into the yellow here, and we're actually going to look at that on the mixer momentarily, and I'm going to show you what that looks like, and I'm going to fit all this stuff together. The last term I want to talk about here is headroom. Headroom is simply the difference, the remaining signal, or the remaining space in between that nominal operating level and your point of clipping. So it's always good to have some level of headroom in there, so you don't risk kind of bouncing too high and getting the signal into clip. So finding that sweet spot, finding this nominal operating level is what I'm talking about, and that is what you're going to be doing when we're properly configuring our levels and staging out our gain structure. All right, now one last slide here. On the TouchMix, what we're using here are Class A preamps. These preamps are very high quality, and with that they have a very low level of noise. So right off the bat, we're giving you an excellent sound quality with these preamps. They are analog preamps. They're the only part of the board that is analog. After they go through the analog preamp here, they are converted to a digital signal, and then everything else in the mixer is done digitally. Something I wanted to highlight. They were created, they are custom preamps that were created by M&W, which is Peter Mackey and Greg Watts. If you're familiar with those names, you'll know that they're no strangers to creating quality preamps. So again, they're very high quality. They're going to give you a good sound. So we're going to go ahead and dive in here, and we're going to talk about what it looks like and the proper level and setting this preamp gain. I'm super good at talking this morning. Thanks for bearing with me, guys. Okay, here we go. Here is my mixer. And I also do want to mention that all of you should have received a download package. Hopefully all of you got to download that, and I hope the instructions were helpful in allowing you to unpack that content and get it ready to be used for today. So we're going to use some of that stuff in a little while. To get us going here, I'm going to just give you a very simple demonstration of getting a preamp dialed in. I'm going to zoom my camera out just for this first part. And I have a microphone here, so I'm going to just demonstrate dialing in my preamp in real time. It's very easy, but I want to give you an illustration and show you what this looks like, what this process can do. I've got my condenser microphone here. I'm using a condenser because I know it has a relatively hot signal, and now I can get this thing to get up and clip. I want it to clip, actually. I want to show you that without having to yell into it, because I don't want to be yelling at you first thing in the morning. No one wants that, right? Okay, so I'm just going to engage my phantom power right there. All right, so on my main mix view here, I've got my microphone connected into channel 22 here, which will eventually become our vocal channel when we unpack our scene. So I've already connected this here, and so I'm going to take my trim for channel 22 like this. I'm going to talk into my condenser right here, and as I start to turn this up, you can see there we go, the meter is lighting up. I've got signal going in here, and so what we want to do as we increase this level, and we're seeing the signal pass across the channel now, we're seeing it get hotter and hotter in the meter, we actually want to take this up to the point where it does clip. Hey, 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 are we clipping? Clip, clip, clip. You will know that there it is. You'll know that it clipped because it's going to start lighting up red, saying it's bad, stop, I don't like this. The other indicator is right up here in the mini faders. This might be hard for you to see with my camera zoomed out, but I mean, I'll punch it back in a minute. If you're following along, and if you have the ability to kind of get a microphone and try this as well, you'll definitely see when you get to the point of clip, the display in the mini faders in the navigation strip at the top will light up red on the fader that corresponds to the channel that clipped. So there are clip indicators up there which will latch. Obviously, the clipping on the meter itself is fleeting. You know, my audio signal is dynamic, so it's not going to just be stagnant red the entire time unless I have like a test signal or something, some constant signal that is just, you know, destroying my preamp. So that is how you'll know overall that your channel has clipped. Okay, so once we find that point, we know, okay, this is a level where we're clipping. I got it. Now we want to back it off. So we want to take the knob slowly down until we're not clipping anymore. But we still want to have a healthy amount of the signal bouncing into the yellow part above the 0, which is representing our unity gain. All right, and that's about what that's going to look like. I'm still clipping a little bit. And the idea is, if this wasn't me just talking to the microphone, if this was an actual speaker that was going to perform a lecture, or a musician or an artist of some kind, you know, whatever it might be, you want them to be testing. This is sound check. They're testing their signal. They're playing the guitar. They're hitting the drums. They're singing into their microphone. You know, at whatever level is intended for the performance. And so, at that given level, you know, you find that right spot here so that the meter is just dancing into the yellow. So the peaks, the top peaks of your signal here are hitting the yellow, and you've done it. Now we found our sweet spot, our nominal operating range. Now, we're not going to leave it here though, even though that is considered the sweet spot. We're going to give ourselves a few dB extra headroom. I explained that really well, didn't I? And the way we can do this, the way you can gauge how much attenuation or gain you're applying on the trim knob is by paying attention to the tick marks around it. Each one of those tick marks represents 3 dB of change. So as you're going up, you know, each notch that you surpass, that's 3 dB, 3 dB, 3 dB. Depending on what mixer you're working with, if you're working with the 8 or the 30 here, all of those ticks are going to be evenly spaced all the way around. This is called a linear potentiometer, so a linear trim pot. So as you increase the level, the pot, as you turn it up, you know, it's a constant 3 dB all the way around. On the TouchMix 16, you might notice that these look a little different. The TouchMix 16 has what's called log pots or logarithmic pots, and so that is not a linear increase. However, the tick marks still represent 3 dB of change each. So you'll notice with your trim knob all the way down here, the ticks are very close together, and as you increase it, they start to widen and widen and widen, get wider and wider the more you increase that pot. That is just a difference in the potentiometer itself. It's not good or bad, it's just something to be aware of, but still be paying attention to those ticks. So each tick you hit, that's 3 dB. Okay, so we found our sweet spot. We're going to give ourselves somewhere between 6 and 10 dB of extra room here. So I'm just going to give myself 6, so that's 2. We're going down 2. And so we're looking about like that. I've still got some yellow in my peaks, which is good. I know we're healthy, but I do have a little bit of extra room here to compensate for potential spikes in the signal that could happen, because audio is dynamic and things happen. If we're pretending that we're sound checking right now, this is a fine level, and giving yourself that extra additional headroom can be very beneficial, because oftentimes when the event starts or the performance starts, whatever's happening, the band starts playing, things are a little bit different than they were during sound check. The room is full of people. Everyone's a little more excited or a little more nervous, and so people might be singing or talking louder or softer or playing harder. The guitar player might get excited and dime his amplifier. The drummer is going to just act like Thor and try to crush his drums. So, you know, your initial levels might not work anymore, and giving yourself that initial extra room can help you compensate for things like that. Now, there is another tool that I want to get into here that can do two things. It can help you run this process that I just showed you, but it could also, the big advantage of this is it helps you to maintain this optimal level over time. So if you do run into situations, you know, where your initial level isn't working anymore, you're still clipping certain channels, you can go and use this tool to help you evaluate and maintain your healthy preamp level. And this tool is going to be the Gain Wizard. So to access our Gain Wizard, we're going ahead and press the Wizards button right here, and we're going to select our Gain Wizard on the screen. And I will zoom it in closer to my screen in just a minute here. I still want to get my trim knob in the shot here just for a minute. But on our Gain Wizard, we have a series of clip indicators, which are not just showing clip, they're actually showing us the intensity of the clip. So we can actually see how badly the preamp clipped, or how bad that signal overdrove our preamp there. And the way it illustrates this is with a series of LEDs. Each LED here represents 3 dB of clip. So you'll see here on my channel 22, I've already been clipping it. So I got, you know, all 4 LEDs illuminated here. That's saying, okay, you've got at least 12 dB of clip on this preamp. You need to turn this thing down. And how I know what to do with that information is by adjusting it by the number of ticks. So I've got 3 dB per LED here, 3 dB per notch on our attenuator, or our trim pot here. So let's say if I reset this back up to kind of where I had it when I was clipping, let's say I was here, I'm going to reset it. I'm going to get this to go again. Check, 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 check. There we go. So now we're clipping. Our Gain Wizard clip indicators have shown us we've got some pretty healthy clip here. If I take this knob back down 4 dB, or 4 notches, which is 12 dB, so I go 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now we can check it again. We can hit reset. Check, check, check. Hello. Okay, that's a lot better. We've still got a little bit of clip, so I've got 1 bar lighting up there. That is representing 3 dB. Depending on what the source is, depending on what your instrument is, this might be fine. If you did want to compensate for that a little bit though, we could keep going. You could just take it down 1 more, reset it, check, 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 check. We still got a little bit. I'm gonna go an additional 1. Check, 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 check. Great. No clipping. Check, check, check. Perfect. Now again, if we want to give ourselves the additional headroom, I can just take it down 2 more notches, and I've got a pretty decent level. I know that my preamp is getting a healthy signal. It's getting a nice robust signal, which is then going to feed into the rest of the mixer and the rest of my gain stages, and I know that everything else from the starting point is going to be pretty well established. Now, this tool is always working. So beyond getting your initial preamp level, let's say you're out here and you're mixing your levels, you're actively, you know, mixing your show, you're writing faders, you're on your main mix screen here. I noticed that a channel has clipped by my clip indicator up in my navigation strip. I've clipped my channel at some point. I say, check, check, uh-oh, I'm gonna clip it again. Hey, yay. Oh no, I've clipped. I can go back in my Gain Wizard, simply by pressing Wizard, Gain Wizard, and I see I've got 4, I mean, I reset it, so I set myself for that one, but it's gonna show you the intensity of the clip, so you can confidently adjust the preamp at an appropriate value instead of kind of just blindly like, oh, I know I got to turn it down, but you don't want to turn it down too much, you know, because then you're gonna make your gain stage, you're gonna throw things off. Your gain stage is not going to be efficient anymore, and things downstream from that might, you know, the levels might be affected in different ways. So maintaining a constant and healthy preamp level is very advantageous to maintaining an overall good sound and keeping your equipment healthy. So that is the Gain Wizard. That is the power of the Gain Wizard, and it's incredibly simple. It's a very simple paradigm. It's very easy to understand what's happening. You can get to it really, really quickly as well. Great. So after we set our preamp levels, let's go ahead and pretend that we dialed in all of our levels on our preamps and we're good to go. And now we want to start writing faders. At this point, if you're following along, if you've got that, that content that we sent out loaded on a drive, go ahead and connect it to your mixer. We're going to unpack the scene. I did create a scene for us all to start from here. And we're going to do that now. So just to explain a scene real quick, I'm going to zoom my camera in for you guys here. Yeah, that's better. A scene is think of it like a snapshot of how the complete mixer is configured. All of the settings in the mixer can be saved as a scene so that can be recalled at any point and the mixer can be reconfigured to whatever those settings were. To get to our scenes, I can do one of two things. I can hit this scenes button right here, which will take us into there, or I can go into the menu. That's menu, and then I can select scenes in the upper left-hand corner there. So there we go. So I'm going to go into my scenes. Now, you guys, if you have your thumb drives or your hard drives connected, in your USB column here, you should have two scenes that I've given you. There should be one called Brown Bottle Flu, and then a starting scene. We're going to go ahead and select the starting scene. Now, on my mixer, these are saved directly in my mixer because I created them and saved them in my mixer. You guys should have these in this field here. Go ahead and select your starting scene and hit the recall button, and then we're just going to confirm that, and that is how you recall a scene. Now you'll know that it took by looking in the current scene field right up at the top here. So that should now match the scene that you selected and recalled. So we've got starting scene up there. Additionally, the scene button up here will now display the scene that you've got currently recalled, and so this button actually will always live here, so you always know what scene you've got recalled on the mixer, which is pretty nice. Now I'm going to press home to get back out to the faders, and all I've really done here is I've just labeled the channels. That's other than channel names. I haven't reconfigured anything. I haven't done any settings. I just wanted to give us a good starting template, with all the channels named, so that when we do get our audio playing, we know immediately what what channels are what. So we have a good reference here. So that's it. Beyond that, to get your audio playing, I'm going to just demonstrate that really quickly. We're going to need to access the tracks on the drive, and we're going to do that in the record play screen by pressing the record play button. I also do want to mention, if you're doing this on a TouchMix 30, you're going to be able to follow along directly with me. If you're using an 8 or 16, you are going to lose some of the channels, and I apologize for that. But you still will have some tracks to play with. So this, you still will be able to listen and kind of critically hear what's happening here. The reason why we're doing this, I should explain why we're sending you the tracks, because clearly I have my tracks and you will be able to hear my tracks. However, one of the limitations of performing a training over Zoom like this is we lose high quality audio. So what you're going to hear out of my mixer on your end is going to be less than high fidelity. So I'm going to be up here, talking all great and telling you that our presets sound so cool, and then I'm going to hit play, and on your end it's probably going to sound like garbage. So we apologize for that. But to kind of overcome that, we've just sent out, we've offered all the tracks that I will be using, the same exact tracks that I'm using to you. So on your own, you have them to play with, and you can follow along with me if you choose to. So just know what you're going to hear out of my mixer on your end. It probably won't sound great due to the platform here, but I promise the preamps the presets are fantastic. So the latter half of this training is going to be talking about presets, because I really want to emphasize the power of the presets. But we're going to get to that in just a minute here. The last kind of step here in getting our levels set is getting kind of a good fader level. For this, we're going to want to have some audio playing. So I'm going to go ahead and get my tracks going. Back in my record play here, I apologize, I'm all over the place a little bit. To get our tracks going, we hit the record play button, and I'm going to go to recording setup. Make sure you're in the proper mode here. So if you have this recording transport bar at the bottom here, that's what we want. If you do not, you're going to want to select record mode here and select a multi-track USB multi-track USB drive. in the center, that's on the TouchMix 30, you will have these three options. On the TouchMix 8 and 16, you will not have the multi-track DAW option, so just make sure you have the multi-track USB drive selected. So your screen looks like this. Now in the record setup, which I can access with this button here, I'm going to select the brown bottle of flu session. We hit recall, we confirm, and then we'll know that we've recalled that session because in the current session field right here, it displays the name of the session that we recalled. Now, I'm going to press record play one more time. That's going to get us back out to our faders and our transport mode. I can reset my timeline if I need to. I can either just scrub this back and forth with my finger, or this button is a return to zero button. This right here, that arrow with the hard line. If I hit that at any point, that automatically resets my timeline to zero. Now, the other thing we need to do to play these tracks is we're going to want to set all of our channels to track. I could have done that for you when I created this scene, but I didn't because I'm very mean. I'm just kidding. I wanted to, demonstrate how to do this. So in order to play audio back from a drive, we're going to hit this track button. And I'm not going to dive too much into recording in this one. The purposes of having the tracks is just to get audio to demonstrate with. We will be running a separate webinar on recording specifically next week though, so pay attention to that and hopefully you can come back and join us for that one. But for now, hopefully you're able to follow along with just this bit. We've got our tracks recalled and we've got all of our channels set to track. So one more time just to show you how to do that. Every single channel is going to need to be set to track across all of our channel banks here, our fader banks. Great. Now we should be able to play some audio. So if I hit the play button here, I got some tracks dancing here. And we're good to go. So I got all my levels happening. We're not hearing anything yet because all of our faders are down. So we have nothing passing to the main output yet. And that's the next step. I'm going to press my home button here because I want to do this on my larger faders. I don't need to see the transport anymore. But I can clearly see I've got audio happening. And if I just bring these levels up one at a time with using my touch and turn technique, where I select a fader on the screen and I adjust it with the wheel, I can quickly start to get some levels in. And now you're going to want to use your ears for this. You're going to want to have your output fader. I'm going to take this down slightly so I can talk over this for a moment. Before you start to do this, you want to have your output fader already set to roughly the level that you think you might want to have it during the show. So your output is already kind of at its set position, and then you start to introduce your channel faders and allow that audio to pass out to your speakers, and so you're hearing audio now, and you kind of just get everything up to the level that you want it to have it during the show. Pay attention to how things are balanced. In a typical mix, not every channel is the same level. Various elements in a mix can kind of sit differently within the mix. So this is just kind of your job to figure out what a healthy balance is. And what you're looking for here on all of your input fader levels is somewhere in general, there are exceptions to this, but in general you want everything to be within -10 and 0 dB on the meter here, on their fader levels. And you can see as you adjust each fader, the name of the fader at the top, as you're making adjustments, changes to the dB output meter, or to the reading. So you can actually see, how much you're incrementing or decreasing your level there. So you want things to sit, for the most part, within -10 to 0. And so kind of find that sweet spot for every channel in that range. Now, there are exceptions to this. This is not a hard overall rule. It's just, in general, kind of try to get everything in that level. That's sort of the sweet spot in your channel faders, getting out to your main mix. And as you're getting your faders up, if you do need to adjust your output, you can definitely do that. If you're getting all these faders up within this range and you're just getting way too much output, definitely bring your main output down and balance. Use that fader and your input faders to create that balance. What you definitely don't ever want to do is clip your main output channel. So be paying attention to that. If you start to clip your output channel, you're out of gas, you're out of PA, you're going to be clipping down the line on your loudspeakers or into your amplifiers and things like that, and that's bad. So just make sure we're not clipping there, and beyond that, you make sure everything's at the volume that you'd like it to be, and everything's got kind of a healthy balance in the mix, and that's it. Once you find that, you should be all set. Perfect timing, the song just ended. Okay, so our initial levels are set. Band just finished its sound check song, trash can ending. Very cool, I'm gonna stop that. Now we can start applying channel processing. Now to do this, I'm gonna use presets, and I'm only gonna use presets, again, because I really wanna emphasize how powerful they are. They are fantastic preamp presets. Just to give you a little background, all of the presets on TouchMix were developed over a period of several months using actual musicians playing on real instruments on varied sized PA systems within different sized spaces and venues and practice rooms and rehearsal spaces and things like that. And so it was a rigorous process. I wasn't involved in that process, but I don't imagine it being very fun. But what we got was some extremely usable presets. These things are really fantastic, and they can get you up and running quickly. Whether you are a seasoned mixing professional veteran or a novice, or maybe never even worked a mixer before, recalling the presets can give you a completely usable, really, really good sound immediately. We like to say that they get you about 80% of the way there, and if you feel like you need to, maybe you can tweak and fine tune after that, but that 80% is a giant head start, and potentially better than you might be able to get to on your own if you're kind of new or a beginner, beginning mixer. Doing really good at talking this morning, guys. So before I get into that, I just want to throw it back out there. Are there any questions at this point on anything we've covered? If you didn't hear over the top, there are a couple of different ways we can ask questions. There's a Q&A, you can drop questions in there, or feel free to just hit the raise hand button and we can open up your mic and allow you to ask me a question directly. Don't be shy. If anything, you know, this is for you guys. So if there are questions, I'm happy to answer them. If you're confused on anything that I've covered so far, you want me to reiterate something, I'm happy to do that. So if not, I'm just gonna keep going. Let's dive into recalling some presets here. I'm gonna start with a vocal channel, and if you're following me on the TouchMix 30, please stick with me here and let's look at the vocal channel. I apologize if you're using the 8 or 16, you won't, the vocal channels at the end of the mix, and so you won't have this. There is actually a way for you to extract that if you wanted to on your own and insert it into another channel in your recording session. I can talk to you about how to do that if you're interested in doing that. But for now, I'm just gonna get my vocal channel going here, and I'm gonna enter the channel by pressing its name above the fader, and that takes us into our channel strip settings. So one more time, by pressing home, I'm out on my main mix screen. I'm gonna simply press the name above the fader like this, and that takes me into the channel strip settings. All right, from here, I'm just gonna go directly to presets. That's all I'm interested in. We do have the full suite of processing that you would expect on any mixer here. We've got EQ, compression, gate, effects, and different routing and things like that, but I'm gonna go right to the presets. I wanna do this quickly, and I'm just gonna get the channel configured almost instantly. So this is the presets screen. The presets are arranged in a 3-bank menu system. The first bank here on the left is the instrument bank. This is the starting point. All the presets are arranged here by instrument type or voice. So this is my vocal channel. So I'm gonna go ahead and go directly into my vocals and speech category. And then in the middle, I have the different types of presets that might correspond to my vocal or instrument that I've selected. I'm going to select music because this is a musical performance that I'm using here. And this is my male lead singer channel, so I'm just going to simply select male vocal. And comp there, it says comp, as that's telling you that it is including a compressor as well. So what the presets do is give you EQ. Every single preset is an EQ curve, essentially. some of them will also give you a compressor or a gate setting as well, and that will be indicated in the name of the preset. If at any point you want a little more information on any of these presets that you might be looking through, if the name is a little too vague or you want more information on what that's going to do, this button here, this preset info, if you hit that, that's going to give you a little clearer description of what that preset's going to do and how that's going to set up your channel.
Hey, Jason.
Yes.
We have a couple questions actually.
Okay.
So just wanted to interrupt and get those in there really quick. One, Bruce has a question. He says, our keyboards use both digital piano and digital organ. With only 2 outputs to the board, what would you use for the presets?
With only 2 outputs to the board. You mean outputs from the keyboards into the mixer?
I believe, Bruce, I have allowed you to talk, so if you want to unmute yourself, if you do have a mic, you can ask. He says yes. Yeah,
okay.
He typed it in.
So 2 keyboards using a single. Okay. I would start with probably the piano, and you're probably going to want to fine tune it though. That's a pretty good one. So let me just make sure I understand this. You've got 2 keyboards, but both of them are using the same inputs on the board, and you're switching them somehow. Is that correct?
Bruce, go ahead and correct. He says correct. Yep.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I would start, if there's one that you're using more than the other, I would lean towards choosing the preset for that one. So if you're using your piano primarily and your organ as some just extra sauce, maybe focus on the piano preset or vice versa. Realistically, you're probably going to need to just kind of figure out which one accommodates both of them the best, and that is probably going to involve starting with one of them and then tweaking it further. And kind of adjusting some of the parameters and finding that sweet spot so that it sounds best on both your organ and your piano. That would be my advice there. That's an interesting operation.
So I'm looking at the preset right now. DigiKeys, it basically only has a roll off.
Okay.
So that's a great starting place if you're using the same input for 2 different pianos.
Good. There you go. Digital keys.
Yeah.
So it's just a straight digital keyboard direct input. It's kind of generic.
And then starting from.
Go ahead.
And then starting from there, they can find the sweet spot between the 2.
100%.
Cool.
Nice. Yeah.
Bruce, hope that answered your question. Thank you. He says thank you. Awesome.
Very good.
And we have one more question from John. The presets you're talking about, are they live or studio? Are they for live or for the studio?
Primarily live, but they certainly could be used in the studio. Yeah, I mean, it's the TouchMix is sort of a live mixing console first with some really awesome recording capabilities. So most of the features are tailored towards a live application, the presets included. But they certainly can be used in a recording situation as well, especially if you're recording directly from the board and you want to capture these settings in your recording. They're fantastic for that. I actually personally do that often. They sound great. Yeah.
Great.
Good
awesome.
question.
Good questions, guys. Thanks.
Thank you. Awesome. I'm going to go get myself back on track here. I'm going to recall this male vocal. Before I do this, I want to do a couple of things. I've already configured a couple of parameters on this channel. I've already got my level set, right? And I've already given it a name. When you recall a preset, it is going to not only give you the channel strip settings, it's also going to reset your channel fader to all the way down, and it's going to give the channel a name based on the preset. If these things have already been done, if you've already got your level set and you've already named the channel and you don't want those things to be affected when you recall the preset, in the recall options at the bottom, I can uncheck, or I can check omit levels and assignments and omit name. Those 2 there. So that's telling the mixer, okay, I want to recall this preset, but I don't want you to affect these 2 parameters. I want my level to stay the same, and I want my name to stay how I set it. And then I'm going to hit recall, and I'm going to confirm it. All right, and then we'll know that the preset was recalled on the channel by looking in the current preset field here. Now it's telling me I've got male vocals, comp, recalled on this channel, and that's exactly what we want. What we don't really want to focus on is the menu itself. The menu is always going to just display whatever the last thing you selected was, even if you were to go to different channels. So if I actually scrub over to my next channel using this next button, you'll see, okay, so now I'm in my female vocal channel. The menu looks the same. It looks like it's still displaying the male vocal compressor here, but if I look in my current preset field here, that says reset. So that's clearly not this preset that is recalled on this channel. So don't let that confuse you. Great. Now I'm going to go back here. Now with this recalled, I can go to my EQ. I can see, okay, it's given me a nice EQ curve. It's rolled off a lot of the low end. It's given us a couple of different scoops in here. And so what it does is it really just kind of cleans up the channel. It eliminates a lot of the stuff in the frequency spectrum that we don't need. We don't need a lot of the low end for a voice, and kind of just applies some curve to the sound so that it allows the channel to focus, allows you as the listener to focus on the most important elements of that sound, really. And it also allows for space. It's by taking away some of these elements that we don't really need in this channel. It's creating additional room for other things in the mix as well. So it's sort of a balancing act. You want to balance all of your different elements in your mix by kind of taking away things that channel might not need, and that frees up that sonic space for other components that might have presence or resonance, within that space themselves. Each different component in your mix is going to have different elements to it and different sound qualities, and so you want to really highlight those qualities and take away stuff that you don't need, or even take away elements of it that might be bad or unpleasing. And that's essentially what you're doing with an EQ. The presets kind of just do that for you. It gives you a really nice starting point, and can clean things up significantly. Let's also take a look at the compressor. It gave us a compressor setting. So a compressor is really helpful on vocals. It's helpful on a lot of things, but it can be very advantageous on vocals, because what a compressor does is it reduces the overall dynamic range of your signal. And something like a voice generally has a very high dynamic range. It has the ability to be very, very quiet and get very, very loud, and sometimes it can go between these two ranges very quickly. And that can make it kind of difficult to kind of control the overall output of that channel. So by applying like a compressor, we can limit that overall range and have a lot better control over the dynamics of that channel and allow it to sit better in the mix over time. So that is what a compressor does. The preset, gives you a really nice, good starting point for your compressor that you can maybe fine tune from there. Maybe you don't need to. Let's listen to this. Enough talking, more listening. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to do one more thing here. And this is a kind of a cool trick, and definitely follow along here, that if you do want to isolate a channel and be able to have the ability to kind of just isolate it very quickly, I'm going to set up a couple of mute groups. Now this is a slight tangent in the lesson here. I'm not going to go too far into groups themselves, but definitely follow me here, and we're going to set up just a couple of mute groups, which is going to allow us to mute entire groups of channels at the same time. I'm going to press the button over here that says mute groups. And this takes us to our mute groups page. And you couldn't see my button here. It's off my camera view, but if you're following along, you should see the mute groups button in the button cluster above your wheel. Press that, you'll get to this screen here. This is your mute groups page, and this is where I can activate any of my mute groups here. I've got 8 of them. And to configure them, I'm gonna press the edit button right here. And so I'm just gonna take mute 1, and I'm gonna make this mute everything but our vocal channel. So we have all of our assignment buttons right here on the main display. I'm just gonna hit everything. I'm going to select every single channel in my mix except for my male vocals, and then I'm going to name it. I hit the name field right at the top. You'll bring up your keyboard. I'm going to clear it. I'm going to say male vox solo. Enter. Oops, missed a couple. Okay. So if you're following, you should look like this. Make sure everything is highlighted except for the male vocal channel. Now when we hit this mute group, it mutes all of those channels, and we're only listening to the male vocal channel. It's going to help us just isolate this channel and listen to what this preset is doing for a little bit. I'm going to do this. I'm going to set up a couple more since we're here right now, because I want to do this on a couple of other channels. I'm going to set one up that just is going to isolate our kick drum. Well, I'm going to name it first. I'm going to say kick solo And then I'm going to select everything except for my kick drum. So those of you that are using the 8 or 16, then you don't have access to the vocal channel here. We're going to go and focus on the drums in a little bit and play with those presets after this. And then I'm going to set up a third one, and I'm just going to give it the entire drum set. So make sure you select everything except for our initial drum channels. So you should have the first 7 channels are all drum set. I'm going to name this drums solo. Here we go. Hopefully you got that. So we got 1, 2, 3 mute groups set up. We've got our male vocal solo, kick solo, and the entire drum mix solo. If I hit the mute groups button again, that I exit the setup screen, and now I'm back on my main mute groups page, and I'm just going to activate my male vocal solo mute group. Okay? Now I'm going to press home, and you can see if I look at all of my channels here, all of the mutes are engaged. Pretty neat. Except for my male vocal channel. You also will notice that they're not red. When you actually engage a mute button directly on the channel, it will turn red. If you're muting the channel from something other than the channel's mute itself, like a mute group or another group type, the mute groups will turn orange to let you know, hey, yeah, the channel is muted, but it's not being muted from the channel. So there's a nice little visual indication for you there. All right, let's listen to this. I'm going to go back into my record play. I'm going to scrub this somewhere just after the beginning where I feel like the vocals are probably going to be happening. I'm going to press play. I'm going to turn this up a little bit. Okay, now, again, over the call here, you probably won't be able to hear a lot of the fidelity and a lot of the changes in here, but just to demonstrate, I'm going to turn these settings off. And we can hear, a couple things. So the channel is, the vocals are a little flat. They don't have a lot of life or a lot of energy. It's not bad. There's also a lot of bleed over from the other performers. You can hear a lot of the drums in the background. You can hear the horns and some of the guitar. All that stuff is kind of washing and bleeding into his microphone. So in order to help clean that up, I'm going to apply the EQ curve there, and it sort of just cleans that up a little bit. It takes, not all of it, you still can hear some of that stuff in the background, and some of it's okay because it's natural. You know, you don't want it to be completely dead, but you do want to just draw attention and focus and highlight his voice and the more pleasing elements of his voice. Additionally, if you turn the compressor on, you can hear that adds a lot of life to the channel. It's really bringing out a lot of presence. It's giving it some energy. It's giving it some nice shine and kind of some sparkle, and really bringing out a lot of the good qualities of this voice. And it's also allowing it to sit really well in our overall mix. That is, you know, each individual channel is going to sound good, but the real power of the presets is using them to build your entire mix. They're all designed to work together, you know, on your various instrument types and your various channels to create a mix, to create an entire mix, you know, where everything is sitting in its own space, everything is heard clearly, nothing is stepping on anything else's toes, anything like that. So that is the power of our presets here. And if you are listening to this on your own, I encourage you to kind of play around with these things even further. For now, I'm going to jump out of my vocal channel here, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to set up our entire drum mix really quickly. I'm going to do this straight through. I'm going to go into start with my kick. I'm going to go into my drums here. Within my drums and my instrument types here, you can see I've got a whole bunch of options based on, you know, my drum selection. I'm going to go to one of our kick options here. There are 2 kick drum options. There's kick no sub and kick with sub. This is simply asking you if your PA system has a subwoofer or not, so you can choose either one according to what your setup is. I'm going to choose no sub because I don't have a subwoofer sitting here right now. And then over here are all of my options. I've got, you know, kick, no sub with a gate, and then I've got a jazz, a couple of rock options, and then just a generic kick with no sub option, which is just a really basic starting point. I'm actually going to go ahead and select the top one because I want to give it a gate. And now I've selected it, and if we look over, I've got an EQ curve. Now check this out. Kind of pay attention to what it's done here. It's scooped out a lot of the sort of the mids and the mid lows here. We're still allowing for the very bottom end to have some presence, and then it's giving us a nice boost up in the top end. Kind of interesting. And so, you know, if you correlate that with what this is here, it's a kick drum, right? So when you listen to a kick drum, you want to have it's a low instrument. You want to hear that nice low body of it, but you also want to have the attack, you know, the actual slap of the beater hitting the drum itself. So you're probably going to want to actually give yourself a little boost somewhere in the high end to bring out that attack of the beater, which when you think of a kick drum, you primarily think of it as a low end instrument, and that might seem counterintuitive, but it definitely gives you a lot better sound to have this high end kind of adjusted into the mix. And again, just illustrates, you know, how well each of these things, how well all of these presets work together to create an entire mix. We're running a little short on the time here, so I'm going to quickly just configure my whole drum mix. I'm going to go to snares, my next channel. Got a whole bunch of snare options here. Again, I'm just going to go ahead and go with the first option. I'm just going to go with preset 1 for all of my channels here, and just doing that is actually going to be a completely usable mix. I've got a tom here. I know this is a 10-inch tom. I do want to give it a gate, so in this instance I'm going to choose one of the gated options. Drums are, it's very common to use gates on drums, and a gate, just to let you know, is a gate is a tool that is used to only allow a certain level of audio to pass over the channel. Think of it as a literal kind of a gate that is closed when there's a small amount of level in your channel, wherever you've set the threshold for the gate to be. You know, when there's audio that is below that threshold level, the gate is closed and audio is not passing over your channel. When the signal on the channel gets above your threshold level, the gate opens and it allows audio to pass over the channel. And it can really help you just clean up that channel and clean up an overall mix by taking out some of the unwanted noise that might be bleeding or washing into the microphones. So on a drum set, it's a good idea to be using gates. Now I've got a couple of overheads here. I'll just use the generic overhead on both of my overheads. And just like that, I'm going to hit home a couple of times, get back out to my faders. I'm going to go and start with my kick drum. I'm going to go to my mute groups, unmute my male vocal solo mute group here, and I'm going to just start with my kick drum just for a minute. I want to isolate my kick drum. I'm going to hit play here, and we should be able to hear this drum. There we go. Now to A and B these things, I'm going to take the gate off, and I'm going to take the EQ out. Now again, we hear a couple things. We definitely hear a lot of the other stage noise coming through, and the drum itself sounds kind of lifeless. It's not very exciting. Turn the EQ on, and you can instantly hear the sound of that kick drum kind of snap into shape and really focus, and it's cleaner, and it's got a really nice characteristic to it. It sounds like a kick drum instead of a basketball. And now if I engage my gate as well, there, now that channel is very well cleaned up. All right. Now, let's listen to the whole drum mix just for a second. Take out my kick drum, solo my whole kit, go back, play my tracks. Okay. So, not a bad starting point. Get some levels going here. And that was just quickly going through and just kind of selecting presets. Now, if I wanted to, I could have actually gone through and paid a little more attention to what the preset options were and maybe chosen presets that were a little better fitted to my application or my style of music or whatever my performances are. So, that is something to play around with. There are, a variety of presets that can kind of help you in multiple applications. And then beyond that, if you feel like you need to tweak things a little further, you do have the ability to go into all of your tools. You can apply small changes to your EQ curve or your compressor and things like that. And you can also save custom presets if you like that. So if you come up with a couple of channel settings that really work for you, that you really like, and you want to be able to save those and be able to recall those at any time, we can go in here. We can go into our presets tab and switch this from factory over to user. And now we're looking at our user presets, where we can save our custom presets, any presets that we want to make ourselves, and then we can recall them at any given time. The cool thing about the custom presets is that you can actually also use them to save effect settings. So all of the factory presets, as I mentioned, are going to give you an EQ, a gate, or sometimes a gate and sometimes a compressor. They're never going to include effects because effects are subjective, quite frankly. And there's a lot more variables that are involved in kind of getting effects dialed in and choosing the effects that you might want to use on a channel. So we don't include those in any of the factory presets, but if you do get some nice effects dialed in on a channel and you like the way it sounds and you want to be able to save those effect settings, that will be saved in any user preset that you save. So any of the channel strip settings are saved in a user preset when you save that. And to do this, all you do is hit the Save As button right there. I've already done this once before. I can give it a name. I'll just say cool preset. I'm very creative this morning. And then you can either save it directly to the mixer, or you can choose to save it to an external USB drive if you've got one connected. And then you just hit the save button. Confirm the save. And I've got it right there. Now, anytime I want to, I can come in and I can recall that preset on my channel, and it will reconfigure the channel to those settings that I configured for myself. And that really is my demonstration. That is the kind of the preset outline, the preset overview. At this point, we obviously continue to build our mix, but we've got our gain dialed in. We've got our channel mix levels dialed in. We've got a nice level coming out of our PA. If we complete this step and just kind of use presets to dial in the rest of our channel settings, we can have a mix up and ready and completely usable very quickly and very easily. And I think any level of user could accomplish this. You don't have to be, a 10, 20, 30-year mix veteran engineer to understand, how to get up and running on the board. TouchMix makes it extremely easy and accessible for any level of user to get this going, to get a good mix, to get a good sound easily. And if you do know what you're doing, you have all the tools that you would expect, but the presets can just save you a great deal of time.
Hey, Jason, we got a quick question actually before we wrap up.
Very cool.
From Ren. Ren, I'm going to allow you to talk. If you do have a mic, go ahead and unmute yourself and you can ask your question live.
Hello, Ren.
Hi. Well, in this case, the snare is almost hitting red with my pot all the way down.
Interesting.
Right?
Okay.
So what can you advise to do in those cases when you get like signals too hot? I know you can tell the guitar player to bring it down or whatever.
Yeah, if your pot is all the way down and you're clipping that input still, you got to attenuate the signal downstream in any way you can.
I would use a pad before the preamp in order to do that. Normally that would happen if you're using some kind of condenser on the snare, but if you're using a 57, that shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, that's a good advice. I would start there. Maybe change the microphone out. The microphone you're using, it probably has too hot of a signal for an instrument like a snare drum. Or you'll need to include a pad in the signal before it hits the mixer preamp, because that's what it comes down to. The signal entering the board is too hot, and if you're all the way down and it's still gassing it, then you're too hot.
Yeah.
This happens to me a lot when drummers set up those sub kicks.
Yeah.
They unless I can pad it before the preamp, there's just nothing I can do about it. It's just blowing it up.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm a drummer, so I went straight to this. I went straight to the snare and see what was going on with the kick and everything. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. No problem. Good question. Awesome. And I really hope you get that worked out. On the inverse of that, actually, that reminded me of something. A good question. If you have if it's the other way, if you have a signal that is really weak, and maybe you have your preamp all the way up, and you still don't have enough gain in the channel, there is a digital gain in the mixer as well, and you can find that by going into any of your channels or the channel that you need to apply this to, and you can either go to the Overview tab or the Setup tab. This is found on either tab, and it's right here. It's this big knob that says Digital Gain. This gives you an additional plus or minus 15 dB of gain after the analog preamp. So, I mean, it's after the analog preamp, so it's not going to help you in your case, Ren, because that's all you get if you're with your input signal. If it's too hot, it's too hot. But if you had a weak signal, let's say, you could give this a little more gas right in here. You can up to 15 dB, so you can hopefully bring that channel up to a proper level, having the analog trim maxed out. This is also very advantageous if you want to be able to recall gain settings in a scene, or if you're mixing remotely, you do have the ability to pair an iPad or an Android tablet with TouchMix, which allows you to wander around and you can mix your show remotely. But you know, without being physically close to the board, you might not have access to the trim knobs. You not be physically close enough to access the trim knobs if you need to do so. The digital gain gives you that option, and kind of the standard operation if you're going to use both of them like that, or if you want to either save them in a scene or if you're mixing remotely, is to leverage the two simultaneously. So if I'm gonna adjust my key. Whoa, sorry guys. Adjust myself back out so you can see this. But what you want to do is turn up all your trim knobs to either noon, straight up and down, or 1 o'clock. Now, do still be paying attention to clip. You know, if you get a certain channel up at noon and it is clipping, you don't want that. So you're going to have to turn that one down. But in general, you want to kind of have a uniform setting for all of the analog preamps, and then from there you go into the digital gain in each channel, and then you adjust it from there according to what each channel might need. So, you know, at noon, if a channel isn't getting enough out of the preamp, you give it a little more with the digital gain, or if at noon it's too hot, you need to bring it down, you can attenuate it with the digital gain, and then you can save those settings in your scene. So you know that, okay, I'm just gonna set all my pots to noon across the mixer. As long as none of them are clipping, you still do have to pay attention to clipping, but you do that, and then you recall your scene, and then the digital gain compensates for the rest of it, and or you know your iPad control can compensate for the rest of that. So that is a common practice, using those two gain stages together. Cool. Glad you reminded me of that. Fantastic. Anyone else have any other questions? Concerns?
So Ken Vetter wrote that it might be advantageous for you to mention that you can save your scene that has all the presets in it to bring it up quicker for later use. But another thing that's really cool to mention is the factory default scenes, especially the rock band scene, has those presets already dropped in there. And I use this often for a festival setup because, as you know, when you're doing a festival setup band after band after band, you don't know what you're going to get right off the bat, but I pull up that festival scene and I start there and then make my adjustments from there.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great shout out. The factory scenes are excellent starting points. They again, unlike a preset, which just configures your channel, these configure the entire board, including recalling presets into your channels and naming your channels. So they're fantastic starting points.
And great effects ready to go, already mounted. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. And then beyond that, if you did, create your own scenes, you have the ability to create any number of custom scenes you might have. So you could start with a factory scene and then tweak it and dial it in a little better to fit, what you're doing in particular, and then save that as your own scene. And so, like for things like festivals, like you mentioned, or band changeovers, even from song to song, if you want to, you could kind of create different scenes to quickly reconfigure the entire mixer based on what you needed to do at any given time. So yeah, very good. Resquare myself here. Anybody else out there? Any other questions, comments, anything I can help you out with? On the last couple minutes here, we are a bit over time. Apologize for that, but this was a little bit of an ambitious lesson, so I hope I got everything out to you guys. I hope it was clear and concise, and I hope if you got the tracks and you had your mixer, I hope you were able to follow along, and I hope you were able to kind of hear on your own how those presets were affecting the channels as we were going through this. And I encourage you to continue to do so, really. Take some time and play with these different settings. Feel free to use the tracks that I've given you, or if you're a musician, plug yourself in. Plug your drum set in, Wells, whatever you got going. We're all kind of stuck at home right now and going a little stir crazy, so this is a perfect time to experiment with things like this and learn and get creative and have fun. Use it to try and have some fun and get yourself ready for when this all goes away and the gates are lifted and we can all get back out there and get out with our normal lives and experience and enjoy live music and live entertainment and live performances and events and things like that. So very good. If there are no further questions, I think I'm going to go ahead and call it and sign us off for the
Real quick, we have one from Anish.
Perfect.
Asking about presets for Indian instruments, which we don't have specifically presets for Indian instruments. However, when I have an instrument come in that I don't recognize, I listen to them play it acoustically first.
Yeah.
And then I may decide what instrument does that most sound like and quickly drop in the preset for that. For example, a bouzouki has many of the qualities of a mandolin. So I may start with the mandolin preset for that. So that's one way that you can deal with instruments that aren't specifically listed in the preset section.
Absolutely, yeah. Yep.
That was the last question I saw in our
same answer.
Q&A.
Okay.
Anish, I've unmuted you in case you do want to tack onto that question, ask something else. If not, if you don't have a microphone, then thank you for your question.
Cool.
He has no mic, but thank you anyway. It's a good question.
I hope we gave you some ideas.
Yeah. I would have given the same answer. Definitely pay attention to the characteristics of the instrument and see if there's a preset that would fit a similar instrument and start there. So great. Great questions today, guys. I really appreciate your participation. Those guys that chimed in. Again, I hope this was helpful to you. If it was not, feel free to let me know. I'll be in the Facebook user group, or you can feel free to email me directly. You should all have my email based on the email I sent out to all of you yesterday. Appreciate any and all feedback. And again, hope you guys are staying safe, staying sane, washing your hands. And thank you again. All right, I'm going to sign off.